Okay.
Glass is broken.
Which glass is broken?
It's broken and there's air coming out, or yeah, I think it's broken.
It is broken? Okay. So up until now, we've been learning about Moshiach and Geulah from two sources. One source is we went through different parts of Tanakh, of the books of the prophets. The other source was the Rambam, Maimonides. Went through 2 chapters of Maimonides, which have all the laws that pertain to Mashiach. And now we're going to be doing a third thing, which is another basic source for the subject, and that's Gemara. And we know that in Gemara, there's a tractate for different subjects. So there's a tractate called Shabbos. The whole tractate is about Shabbos. There's a tractate called Kedushin. The whole tractate is about marriage. There's a tractate called Rosh Hashanah, and so on. There is no tractate that the whole tractate is about this subject, but there's one tractate which has the most information in one place on the subject of Mashiach. And the name of that tractate is Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin are all the laws that pertain to the Sanhedrin. What's Sanhedrin? So Sanhedrin is the highest court of rabbis that exists in the Jewish nation. We had this only in the times when there was the Beis HaMikdash. And that is, generally speaking, a court of rabbis consists of 3 rabbis. Sometimes when there's a judgment that's much more serious, you would have 11 rabbis, 23 rabbis. The highest court was situated in the Beis HaMikdash, and there were 71 sages, and they were the highest, they were the greatest sages of the nation, and they would make the ultimate decision about things if there was a question or a doubt. And they were situated in the Beis HaMikdash, and they were called Sanhedrin. So there's a whole tractate about Sanhedrin, which would include a lot of laws pertaining to what is the authority of a Jewish court of rabbis, what they could do, what they can't do, how they make judgment, and it's a lot of information there. In that book, there's one section that talks about Mashiach. So I made copies there from the Art School of Gemara, and we're going to not do the whole thing, but certain parts of it. I'll give this out, and we'll do certain parts of the Gemara. So again, anything that you hear about Mashiach, usually it will come either from one of the verses in Tanakh, in the books of the prophets. Either you'll find it in the Rambam, which is the book of Halacha, or you find it here in the Gemara. There are many other sources, but the other sources are scattered here, there, different places. But these are the three places where the information on Mashiach is all concentrated in one place. Those of you that joined recently, that means you never really did the one sources in Tanakh, you never did the sources in the Rambam. You have to figure out how to make up for that. Because I really think that comes before this, but we'll have to figure that out. Okay. So let's turn to the first page. On top of the page, you just say 96b. If you're not familiar with Gemara, in Gemara, the page numbers are only on one side. So when we make reference to Gemara, we'll say it's page 96. But being that there are two sides to the page, so therefore we'll say 96A is the front side, 96B is the second side. So in the original Gemara, this is on page 96. In Hebrew, that would be Tzadik Vav, but it's on the second side. And it says start, that's where we're going to start with, where the word start. It says like this. Rav Nachman asked Rabbi Yitzchak. Thank you. Rav Nachman asked Rabbi Yitzchak, Mi Shamilach, have you heard when Bar Napli will come? The word Bar Napli means the one that fell. So he said to him, who's Bar Napli? What? I never heard that before. What does Bar Napli mean? Amalei, Mashiach. I'm referring to Mashiach. So he says, Mashiach, you're referred to as Bar Napli? Bar Napli means someone who fell. Is that a way to describe Mashiach? So we answered him, yes, I have a reason for that. The reason is because it says, on that day, it says that on that day, I will establish, let's turn the page, Sukkahs, David and Epheles, the booth of King David that has fallen. So we know that King David was appointed as a king, and his son became a king, and his son's son became a king, and there were a dynasty of kings. Eventually came a certain point in history where we no longer had any kings. We no longer have any people that are kings from King David. So that means that the dynasty and the kingdom of King David fell. And the person uses the term that when Mashiach will come, Hashem says, I will reestablish the booth of King David that fell. There's a lot of commentary here, as you see. So one of the explanations that are given, why is it referred to as a booth? Talking about kingdom, royalty. A booth is usually something which doesn't have so much sort of significance. So why are we referring to it as a booth? And the answer that's given is the difference between something which is like a booth or a house is when a house collapses, you can't just put it back up. You have to rebuild the whole thing. It's a whole new structure. The old one is gone, and you have to build a new house because the house collapsed. A booth that falls down, you just set it back up again, put it together again, because it's something which is like a tent or something similar to a tent. You just put it back together. It comes to show us and indicate that the Mashiach will come. It's not going to be a new kingdom. It'll be reestablishing the ancient kingdom that was always there from King David, which means to a certain extent, his kingdom never really collapsed, didn't really fall apart. It was temporary, not there temporarily, and when Mashiach comes, it will be reestablished. Amalei, so we said to him, Hachai Amar Rabbi Yochanan. This is what Rabbi Yochanan said. Now I have to give an introduction to what we're going to be learning. One of the differences between redemption now and redemption in the past was when the Jewish people were in Egypt, they were given a time. They were told that they'll be in, it says in the Chumash, that they're going to be in this exile for 400 years. When the Jews went into exile with the Babylonians, they destroyed the first Beis Hamikdash, and all the prophets warned them that this is going to happen. They were also told, and if you don't follow the Torah, the temple will be destroyed. You'll be in exile for 70 years. In fact, they went out of exile exactly 70 years later. However, with this exile, we were also warned the temple will be destroyed, but we were never told when this exile will end. And in fact, it's almost 2,000 years. Yes, now we're coming to the end. We see all the things. But even though we were never told when it's going to end, what we're going to see in the Gemara and other sources is what's going to be happening in the world at the time, which means we'll be able to identify that the time is near because it prophesizes what will happen at that time. So when we see these things happening, we'll know that the time is here. So here are some of the things that it says. And in fact, some of the things that we're going to see are very positive things. And some of the things we're going to see are actually negative things. And it's important to know both, because when you see positive things and you get excited, we should realize it's not just a nice positive thing. It's actually one of the signs that we're coming closer to Mashiach. So it's like a person who's traveling, and you're traveling on the road for many hours. It's very exciting when you finally see a sign that says, this and this place, this destination, New York, Boston, wherever you're going, is in 15 miles. Oh, now I'm getting close. So these are sort of the signs that we're getting close. On the other hand, when something negative happens, the feeling is, wow, something like this just happened. It's so negative. This must mean that we're far, far away from Mashiach. Look how things are happening. But if you look in the sources, see on the contrary, some of these negative things are actually the signs that Mashiach is coming. And again, another introduction is, I don't have the sheet here with me, but in the beginning of the year, I gave you a sheet with terms. One of the terms that are related to what we're going to see now is something called Chevle Mashiach. Chevle Mashiach means the birth pangs of Mashiach, which means that there's a parallel drawn in the Gemara, and we'll soon see it, that just like a woman before she gives birth, as she's giving birth, is having pain, which is from the labor. So on one hand, it's a wonderful thing, having a baby, having a child, new life, exciting, and people, how much they wait and hope that they should be blessed with having a child. But nevertheless, the process of bringing this child into the world very often comes along with a lot of pain. And we're not explaining why, we're just explaining what. That the pain is not ordinary pain, that there's an illness, somebody's sick, or there's something to be worried about. It's pain that's part of a process that's going to lead to a great blessing, having a new child. Same thing with Mashiach. We don't understand why, we can't explain it, but we just know what? That before Mashiach comes, the world, the Jewish people, will go through a time of suffering, but it'll be suffering which will be described as Chevle Mashiach. It's the labor pain leading up to redemption. So some of the things which you're going to read, which are negative, is because it's part of that process. As we go along, maybe we'll go more a little bit into explaining it, why, but let's just get started. Amalei, so this sage, Rabbi Yitzchak, said, I want to tell you something in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, an earlier sage. He said like this, the generation when the son of David will come. So we know this from before. The son of David is another way of referring to Mashiach. He's not a son of David because David lived over 2,000 years ago, but it means a descendant of David. Nevertheless, the term that's used very often is Ben David, the son of David. What will happen at that time is the number of Torah scholars will decrease, which means it's going to be actually the passion for studying Torah, the desire to study Torah, people involved in Torah study Torah will be much less than it was in earlier generations. And the rest of the people, their eyes will become worn out from grief and anxiety. Numerous troubles and harsh decrees be constantly appearing anew. In fact, before the first trouble is over, a second one will appear. In other words, describing that these will be sort of the labor pains that are going to come before Mashiach comes. Now let's go to the second column. The rabbis taught in the Brisa, there's going to be a 7-year cycle preceding the coming of Mashiach, when the son of David will come. So I did forget to say that a lot of the things here are metaphors, are not to be taken literally. It's a metaphor. And a lot of the commentary is about what is the metaphor, what does it mean, what does it represent. But we'll just read it, and we'll, as we go along, we'll try to explain the best we can. So it says that even though it's a metaphor, you still get an understanding of the spirit of how it describes that time. There'll be a 7-year cycle. The first year of the 7 years, there's a verse that says, I will bring rain on one town, and at one time I will not bring rain, which means in one place there'll be sufficient sustenance and food. In the other place there'll be famine. The second year, it's going to move ahead. The arrows of famine will be sent forth, which means there'll be limited famine in all areas, but a limited famine. The third year, there'll be a great famine, hunger. And unfortunately, men, women, and children will perish. And even pious people, people of good deeds, will perish. And the Torah knowledge will be forgotten by its students because it'll be such a difficult time.
And what is this talking about?
This is talking about before Mashiach comes, the 7-year cycle before Mashiach comes. Let me add another thing, by the way, so you'll be able to sleep at night. The other thing is like this. There's a rule. You can come in. There's room for you somewhere, someplace. There's a chair here.
There's a chair right here.
What? It said the first year there'll be famine, there'll be hunger in one place, and other places will be fine. The second year there'll be hunger in all the places, but it'll be a limited hunger. And the third year there'll be a great hunger. Well, if you want anything to eat, then it'll be much more difficult. What I want to say is, even things, the Rambam writes, Maimonides, one of the things we learned was that there are certain things it says about Mashiach at that time which are positive. Like the nations of the world will no longer have wars. Anything which is a prophecy about positive things happening will certainly happen. Any prophecy about negative things happening doesn't have to happen. How can it be? A prophecy is supposed to be true. So the answer is, even a prophecy that would be pronounced by a prophet, that Hashem sent me to tell you that this is going to happen in such and such a way, if it's negative, it could be changed through tshuva. And the example for this, or maybe we can even say the source for this, is the story of Yonah and the whale, the famous story that we read this in the shul on Yom Kippur. Yonah was a prophet, and he was sent to Nineveh, a city, and he was sent with a message that because they conducted themselves in evil ways, it wasn't a Jewish city, it was non-Jews, but he told them because they conduct themselves in evil ways, in 40 days, the whole city will be destroyed. And when they heard it, they took his words very seriously. And the king decreed that everybody has to fast and do tshuva. And that's what they did. And as a result of that, the decree was canceled. So we learn from this that even if a Navi, what? No, I'm talking about a story that happened in the times of Yonah Hanavi, of a prophet. This prophet Yonah, I'm giving an example where we see that negative prophecies could be canceled. And we see that in that case it was canceled. Same here. Even if this would be meaning literally that these things are going to happen, but by us doing, that's why there's such an emphasis now in Torah, in mitzvahs, good deeds. You have no idea the power of another good thing that you do. Anything good we do could have the power to cancel any of these negative things that could have been happening. So even though it says this is meant to happen, first of all, not everything means in a literal sense. And second of all, even if it does mean literally, we can cancel it through adding in good deeds. Then it goes on to say that the fourth year, things will start improving. There'll be food, but not completely the way it should be. The fifth year, there'll be sustenance and sufficiency in the food. Let's turn to the next page. People will eat and drink and be happy. And again, just like we'll see an upswing in the physical condition, we'll see an upswing, an upgrade in the spiritual condition. People will start learning Torah again, and so on. That's the fifth year. What's going to happen in the sixth year? The sixth year, there'll be a lot of noise. What does that mean? So Mepharshim will say there'll be a big commotion about Moshiach coming. But again, I'll give you one of the commentaries is we know that one of the things that's going to happen when Moshiach comes is there's a verse that says, Hashem says, I will blow the great shofar, and that shofar that'll be sounding such an alarm that it'll alert all the Jews that are all different places scattered all over the world, and they'll start coming to Jerusalem, to Eretz Yisrael. So the question is, when it says, I'll blow a shofar, is that literally a shofar? Or is it mean figuratively? Something will happen, a major event will happen, which will shake everyone up and bring people to become more aware of their roots in the land of Israel, and they will come and gather towards Eretz Yisrael. So you'll see this also here in the footnotes, in the footnote 11 of one of the greatest Torah authorities, where he writes, it doesn't necessarily mean a shofar physically. That itself would be a miracle. How can you blow a shofar and people will hear it all over the world? Even though today you can blow the shofar and watch it on the internet and the whole world can hear it and see it. Things we couldn't have dreamed about, 50 years ago. But today it's possible. But he also says it doesn't necessarily shofar. It means some event is going to happen that's going to be so powerful, it'll be like a shofar that is going to wake everybody up and make people aware of their heritage and Eretz Yisrael, and it'll bring people to return to their roots. Yes?
Two questions. One, is the famine that you're referring to in here intense with spiritual hunger or like physical hunger?
So that's exactly what I said. It could be interpreted physically, and it could be interpreted in a sense spiritually.
The second question is, you said it's what, note 11?
Yeah, on page 97A2.
Oh, A2.
97A, that's where I'm holding now. And then there's a little number 2 next to it. You don't have it?
We only have 97A4 and 97A5 and 97A6.
Everybody?
No. Some people think that
So I have some extra copies here. Let me see if these copies are complete or I'm missing.
I think there's two handouts.
Right, this one starts with 4, so this one is mistake, sorry. Should have starting with 97, 96, it should start with.
I have the whole thing.
The whole thing, okay. I'm sorry, we'll have to make more copies. So you'll be listening to the oral Torah now.
So you're also
What? But I'd have to find the originals, so we'll have to leave it. Okay, I'll get it for the next time. So in fact, in 1967, in June, there was a historic event that happened in Eretz Yisrael in Israel. known as the 6-Day War. That was an incredible miracle. I had the merit to live through it. Actually, I was in Australia at the time, but the whole Jewish world was really panicking because you're talking about something which, by the way, never happened before or after. Israel was, first of all, at that time, a smaller country. They weren't as developed as they are now. And they were being attacked from 3 neighbors. The Egyptians were attacking, the Jordans were attacking, Syria was attacking. And in just looking with eyes from the natural perspective, it didn't look like there was much hope. In fact, Israel itself prepared for tens of thousands of, God forbid, I don't even want to bring it out of my mouth, what they thought would happen. Instead, in 6 days, the war was over. The entire Egyptian army, air force was destroyed. So the Israelis had the total control of the air. And from there, they were able to do everything else. And what was going on in those days in the newspapers, like Israel was described as Superman, all sorts of interesting, the world was in awe, literally in awe, but it was a miracle, not even a question, it was a miracle. To a certain extent, we can say, whoever wants to go back and trace things back, you'll see and at the time, before you can even see it, the Rebbe already said that this miracle that just took place is the beginning of the great shofar that it talks about. In other words, this was an event that brought Jews all over the world, even Jews that didn't identify so much with their Jewish identity, but when they heard that Israel is under attack, and God forbid, in a place where they want to eliminate the whole country, people became much more aware of their Jewish identity, want to identify with Israel, and that was a surge in the Tshuva movement. A second, I just want to say the Tshuva movement began earlier, but a surge in this Tshuva movement definitely took place in 1967. That's an example of the great shofar. Yes?
So it was six years?
1967.
Yeah, but I'm saying it was considered.
Oh, no, I don't know if that was the cycle. I don't know how to apply this to that cycle. Let's look at the next one. What's going to happen in the 7th year? There'll be wars. So obviously wars are also some sign of leading up to Moshiach. And the next year, which means after the 7th year, that's the year that the son of David will come. So again, it's very hard when you stick Gemara, because Gemara is, a lot of things are metaphoric. And I want to remind you, that's one of the things I pointed out, that when you learn Rambam, Maimonides, in Maimonides, there are no metaphors. Because Maimonides is a book of halacha, and everything written there is technical, literal, and there's no sort of explanations that it means some sort of a concept or metaphor. But in Gemara and in Medrash, and even in the words of the prophets, is very often metaphoric, more often than it is literal. So, but what it does say here, something about the 8th year. So it's always been known that the year following the sabbatical year, the 8th year, was always a year that people looked forward that maybe that's the 8th year that it's talking about. So it happens to be that right now, this year is a sabbatical year, Shvius. Next year is going to be the 8th year, but we don't wait so long anyway.
And there's war.
Has to happen this year. Has to happen today.
And there's war.
And there's what?
And there is war.
Right. Yes.
So it's something like first year, second year, third year, but also does it refer to like the 1,000-year cycle, right? There's 6,000 years. It's literally just like Hebrew calendar years. Like this year this happens, this year this happens.
Generally, I wouldn't think so, because it's talking about something which is going to happen in the future, right? So wait a second. Here this rabbi said to him, wait a second, there were so many 7-year cycles. Look at the next piece. But there have been so many such 7-year cycles that Mashiach did not come. So he said to him, but did you see in the 6th year and the 7th year the noise and the wars? And being that you didn't see it, so it's not the full sort of description of this 7-year cycle. So for us, we're not judging by this anymore, because could be we went through this 7-year cycle already, but we're basing it on the words of the Rebbe that he said in 1991, and that was the time with the Persian Gulf crisis, And the Rebbe brought a source that describes that crisis. And that's when he said that as a result of what we see, it's clear that we're now in the time of that's approaching redemption. And that's why there's such a commotion about Moshiach and so on. The next paragraph, there's a verse that says, I'm on page 97A2. You're wondering why there's so many numbers. So again, the original in the Gemara is 97A. But because it has English translation, so for one page of Gemara, there's a few pages of the Hebrew English. So 97A2 means in the English translation, it's the second page. It's 3, 4, 5 pages. So there's a pasuk that says, Asher chefu evecha Hashem. Your enemies have taunted you, Hashem, and they have taunted the footsteps of Mashiach. Which means that one of the things we'll also find is that people will sort of be laughing about the subject of Mashiach, which is also something which we see. People will be ridiculing it and saying, come on, my great-grandmother believed in Mashiach, it never happened, and things like that. So that's what it says, that at that time, people will be so they'll be so distraught and at a point where they'll be sort of so much giving up that they won't even believe that it's actually really going to happen. Which, by the way, is similar to what happened in Egypt. When Moshe came to the Jews in Egypt and told them, I'm here to take you out of Egypt, what does it say? A lot of the Jews didn't believe him. Why? They were so drained and exhausted and in such despair from all the hard labor that it just didn't register that it could be that now it's really happening. And that's the way it will be. That was after 210 years, and this is after 2,000 years, so it's understood that people might have that feeling. Here goes another piece, which also describes how things will deteriorate in that time. We learned in a brisa. Rabbi Yehuda says, I'm 97A too. Rabbi Yehuda said, in the generation when the son of David will come, Beizvad Yiznus, a place of meeting where people were supposed to be meeting for serious meeting purposes, will turn out to be a very unrefined and not things which are immodest will be going on. The Galil will lay waste. Galil is a location in Israel. And the Gavlan will be desolate, which means, again, another location. The people of the borders will wander from town to town and not be granted favor, which means the people of the borders are in the greatest danger because they're bordering with the enemy. So they're going to have to run away from there. And wherever they go, they won't have a place where to be. The wisdom of scholars will decay. Those who fear sin will be despised. In other words, rather than respecting and looking up to persons that are scholars and they fear sin and they're God-fearing, people will look down at them, will ridicule them. People will ridicule those who are dedicated to Torah and to mitzvahs. And here's another interesting quote. And the face of the generation will be like the face of a dog. What does that mean? There's a lot of... What?
A dog is Caleb, right? Which is
Right.
So it's just going to be all about feelings.
Okay, so that's actually one of the interpretations that people bring, that the word Kelev, which is the Hebrew word for dog, spells in Hebrew all heart, all emotion, which I guess it means people will just give in to their emotions and rather not have their mind, their intellect, logic, judging and disciplining them how to conduct themselves. But specifically, it's talking about the leadership. I think the most accepted interpretation that you would hear is another interpretation, and that is dogs have an interesting nature. When a person is walking with their dog, usually the dog runs ahead, right? But then he turns around to see where you're going. And if he sees you turning right, the dog goes to the right. If you're going to the left, he goes. So is he leading you or are you leading him? It looks like he's leading you. He runs ahead. But then he looks to see where you want to go, and that's where he leads you. And that means that the leadership will be corrupt. A leader of a country, a community, is supposed to be someone that he is the leader, He's supposed to lead us in the right direction, to do the right thing. But there'll be so much corruption that rather than choosing to lead us and to do what's right rather than what's wrong, people will lead in a way that what's going to be popular, what's going to get me my votes, what's going to get me my support. So they look to the people to say what they want, and that's where they lead them, rather than leading them in what they know to be right versus wrong. So that's why it says the leadership will be like the face of a dog. But the emes nederes, the truth will be something which will be absent, which means it will be very hard to find truth, which means there'll be a lot of corruption, a lot of deceit. People won't be honest, and the people that turn away from evil will be considered foolish. Again, those who won't be that way will be looked down rather than be respected. Let's turn the page again, 97A3. So the Gemara asks, what does it mean when it says emes nederes? He's talking about the Hebrew term nederes. And the rabbi answers, in the academy, they said, it means the truth will be formed into groups and go away, which basically means that people who are holding by the truth, they'll be a minority and they'll be sticking together, but they won't be accepted by the general society. They'll be looked down upon as if they're the ones who don't fit. Then the Gemara asks, what is the meaning of the words Sar Umar Mishtelo? Those that turn away from evil will become foolish. What do you mean they'll become foolish? It means whoever turns away from evil will be considered foolish by the rest of the people. They'll be looked down upon. So again, this shows us how things will deteriorate in that time, that the values will be so unfortunately bad, that if someone is truthful, rather than wow and respecting the person, they'll be considered a fool. Then the Gemara tells a story about truth. Rava said, at first I used to say, there is no truth in this world. It's interesting, this is written like 1,500 years ago. What would they say today? He said, there's no truth in this world. But then I met one of the rabbis and he said to me, his name was Reb Tuvas. Reb Tuvas said to me that if you'd give me all the money in the world, I would never tell a lie. I would never bring something out of a mouth which is not true. And he told him a story that happened to him, a personal incident. I visited a certain town, and the name of the town was Kushta. Kushta in Aramaic means truth. That was the name. The name of the town was truth. Obviously, he moved into that town. And what was special about this town? People in that town did not die at young age. They died at an older age. And I married a woman, he said, from that town. And he had 2 sons. One day, his wife was washing her hair. And a neighbor came and knocked on the door and said he wants to speak to her. So he felt uncomfortable telling the neighbor she's washing her hair now. That's how he felt. It was not proper. So therefore, he said to the neighbor, she's not here. You know, that's quite common. You don't want to speak to somebody, say they're not here. Really, you should say not available. That's truth. Not here is not really true. But God, what happened, unfortunately, was that his 2 sons died. The people of the town came running to him and said, what did you do? How could this happen? No one dies in this town at a young age. And he told them what happened. So they said to him, we beg you, please leave our town and don't incite death against the people of this town. In other words, obviously, with the sage, things are so much more sensitive. Because he was a sage, and because he was in this town, therefore lying was a much more sensitive thing. We had this in Pirkei Avos, if you remember, that we said that in the Beit HaMikdash, or the Holy of Holies, a little thing that's out of line is much more destructive, much more effective than the same thing someplace else. Actually, I thought of another example, an interesting example. Maybe only Americans know this, but everyone knows the story of the princess and the pea. So what does it mean? A princess is sleeping on 10 mattresses and there's a pea on the bottom and she's uncomfortable. In other words, she grew up in such a delicate, sensitive life that a little thing like that affects her. In fact, Rashi says this in Chumash. It's interesting. Rashi says in Chumash, where the Torah says that if the Jews will live in Israel and not observe the Torah, then the Israel will sort of reject them from the land. Rashi says it's like a person eating food that's not good for the stomach. What happens? The stomach rejects it. But Rashi says there's a difference between ordinary people and people that are used to eating decent food. They're used to eating decent food. And when they eat something which is not on that level, and their stomach can't handle it. In other words, children who grew up in a palace with a king, and they always had the best of all foods, something which is not perfect, their body is going to reject it because they can't handle it. So basically, for a tzaddik, a righteous person of this caliber, living in a city of such caliber, which is only truth, that was something which is much more serious, and unfortunately, it had that effect. Okay, it's 10 o'clock, so I guess we'll stop here. There's really one more paragraph. If I forget, remind me next time we have this class to do this paragraph. Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Hear some more of the statements.
Got it. Thank you.
I know you got your mother's on. They keep reminding about it.
Then go back. Yeah, can we like bring something?
I like always. She wants to open surgery and make anything ready here, but
Is your bag?
No.
I think we can move forward. What's in it?
Yeah, I think so. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's nice. Sure. Thank you. I'm glad that you I know like for perspective. I love it. I love it. Stop.